Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Wednesday. It's November 9th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And real quickly, before we get to the chart lesson today, I'm going to give you a little update on some personal things that are going on with me. So I'm really distracted right now. I'm still coming in and working every day, and I need to do that. But most of you know I talked about my son got married last weekend. A few days later, I had my first grandbaby. My daughter has a new baby, a little girl. So I'm now a grandfather. So I had that going on. But then Sunday night, my mother had a stroke in the middle of the night. Luckily, she was able to call me and get the door open before she really lost most of the control of her right side of her body. She's in the hospital now and going through physical therapy, and uh, it's possible she can recover. She's 80 years old, and she's a little frail and weak already. But and as most of you know, I lost my father about 6 or 7 years ago, I believe it was, and so it's just her. I do have a brother, and of course he has a job and has to work every day too. But my job gives me a little more freedom than him. So I'm probably going to be distracted quite a bit here as we get my mother settled for the next couple of weeks. So I may be slow to read email. I may be in and out of the office a lot. I'm still going to come in every morning, trade a couple of hours, try to do my morning things, and then I may have to step out here and there. And so, needless to say, my life is a little bit hectic right now with all the personal things I've got going on. And I don't tell you this for any sympathy or anything, just so you know, if it seems like my mind's a little cluttered, or if I'm a little distracted, or if I'm a little slower to answer emails or requests or reading the forum or anything like that. I just got a lot going on in my life right now, and I'm trying to work through it all without disrupting my daily routine too much. But obviously, I've got to take care of my mother. So, um, but anyway, if you're the praying type, I appreciate your prayers and your thoughts, and just keep me in your prayers, and that my mother will heal quickly and that she'll fully recover. Because if she doesn't, that's another big thing that's going to be, the last thing I want to have to do is put my mother in a home or anything like that. But if she has to have 24-hour care, I don't know what else we'll do. But anyway, I'm not trying to dump that on you guys, but I did want you to kind of know what's going on with me, so that if I do seem distracted, or um, it seems like I'm not around as much, that's probably because I'm not going to be for the next few weeks as I get work through this issue with my mother, and um, trying to help my daughter and her husband with the new baby and things like that too. So anyway, let's get to the chart lesson. Again, thanks for like I said, if you're the praying type, I'd appreciate your prayers for my family and for my mother. But let's get to the chart lesson and take a look here. Here's our daily chart, and this is the envelope bands. For anybody new that's not quite sure what this chart is, I usually show this first just to get an idea where we may be going next. And it's a little unclear right now. My guess is we're probably going to trade lower. However, notice this. We do have a close outside here, it looks like. It's not a real convincing one, but even here we had another close outside, then a new high, and then we traded down fairly strongly. We had a little temporary bounce, and then we've turned back down here. But notice as we turn back down, we bounced right off that midline of this big blue channel. So if that holds, we could push higher again. If it doesn't, if we push on down, we'll probably pull back and test that from the underside to see if it holds. And if it doesn't, we could go higher yet again. I mean, that's what we'll do. Prices usually, when they push through a midline like that, they're going to pull back and test it. Anytime you push through support or resistance, you're going to pull back and test it. Just like right here, we pushed this purple line is the midline, and that acts just like a regular bid line. That's not the same. It's not calculated the same as the other bands. This is actually a midline. It's like a 21 bar midline. And notice when we pushed through, we pulled back and tested it. But we didn't turn lower. We pushed it. Prices were able to force their way on through. So it doesn't mean we're going lower yet. We could turn on down and head lower now, but now we're testing the upper side of that midline. which is very similar to a 21 EMA. It's a support and resistance type line, and so far prices have held. Now tomorrow, if we turn on down through there and close, we still could come back and test it from the other side before we go lower. It just depends on how weak this market is. The way the election stuff has turned out, I don't think it's favorable for the market in the short term, and probably not even the long term. So and you can see that through all the selling today. The market turned down and sold off strongly. Now that doesn't mean we'll get follow through. Things haven't quite been decided yet, but I don't think the Democratic-led government's not as conducive to a rising stock market as it would have been if it was Republican. So, and that's not to say either side's right. I'm just telling you what the history shows is that Democrats are not good for the stock market. So, especially the way the economy's going right now. So, anyway, we could go lower here. That's what it's looking like. We may not go lower yet, but I would be surprised if we don't go lower before it's over. So let's flip over to today's chart, and you'll be able to see it matches this very negative day here. Okay, here's our 2,000 tick chart from a very high level. And what it looks like is we had a spike down and we went into this channel. This channel was a little harder to find. We never really got a confirmation of it by coming back again. So we touched it a couple of times and then traded down, and this looks to be the other side of it. And you can see that kind of fits for the midline. Now, most of you probably couldn't, unless you're more experienced and have been doing this a little while, you probably couldn't find this other side consistently before it was there. But let's just say prices were way over here, like so. Let's just say like right there. What I would do was I'd pull this thing down, and it looks like it fits there maybe, but there's not getting a lot of play off that. But I'd start trying to make that midline fit the best. And it looks like it fits pretty good right there. Let's actually zoom out some, like so. And it looks like it's fitting pretty good. I can't remember exactly where it was, but that's probably would have been my first guess. And so this would be where I'd be looking for prices to go. And you can see I missed it by a little bit, but that would have given you a good idea. And then of course when you made this low, I'd have moved it on down to there, and it fits okay up here on the midline, but you can see we didn't come back. Once you got this price action, you probably, let's just say once I got that price action, I might, even then though it's still a little harder, you probably would have still gone to what I originally had, but you would have moved it down there, and that would have got you through the close anyway. That would have been really close. So, but that's what I'm getting at, is I would use that midline to try to find the lows. It looks pretty good right there, but so you might have started out with it there, and as we continue to go lower, you got to probably adjust it. And then to me, but you're probably going to see that right there came back to touch it at some point. So as you got more, so when we looked at it earlier, we were up here. Now you got this. So when your prices are going to come back and test that, just like I talked about on the daily chart. They're going to come back and test that midline. So this would have given you a little more information, and you drag it down where it's touching these, and then I got it almost to the tick right there. I missed it by a few ticks. And so what it probably was I probably should have used these stems a little more right there, like so. That's a little bit too much, but notice how there's one, I don't know if you can see that, there's one stem that's a little higher. A lot of times when you're playing off stems, that's the way you have to do it. You play maybe where it touches the top of the smallest stem, and if you were from the other side, the bottom of the smallest stem. But notice how I ran it right off that stem, and then it doesn't quite touch there. So let's see if we can just adjust it enough to touch right there, and then see how close we got. Well, we're still a little far down, but anyway, that's how I do it, and that'll get you close. I mean, you're not ever going to get it perfect. I mean, sometimes you do get it perfect, But if you can, this one was a little more difficult because you're not getting a lot of touches on the midline either. So till the day's almost over, and so then it doesn't really help you as much anyway. But as you get to doing this, you'll be able to figure this out a little more. And obviously, we probably want to use those closes right there. And you can see we're kind of bouncing. There's another one right there that pulled back, so it was probably pulling back. So let's go back up a little more. And you can see we're getting close. I mean, this one's a little more difficult, but that'll get you in the ballpark, even if you don't get it exactly right. And sometimes these midlines are real clear, and it makes it real simple. This one's not so clear because, you see sometimes you're pushing through it, and then sometimes you're bouncing off of it, and so this one's not as clear. And you don't get a lot of touches. Like sometimes you'll get a lot of touches on it, so it makes it clear. But in the end, it's probably would have. I mean, that's where you would have wanted it. And you can see how that plays in there, how we've coming back, and there's just not a lot of touches on it, so it's not as easy as one to do. But like I said, as long as you can get in the ballpark, that's the key. So, and a lot of times it's just the width of two of them, or the top width, and so you might not have been that hard to find this low end here, and then just double that. So in other words, you wouldn't have wanted to come way down here and do it, although that does look pretty accurate. And if we'd had more time, maybe we'd have made an equal distance that far. But you can see we didn't get anywhere near that. So, but usually if it's going to be a second tier, it'll push through some and you'll have your consistent ones. And those look more consistent than we push through. So maybe you try it there. And you see you still came up a little short from that. But anyway, hopefully you understand what I'm saying. You get the gist of what I'm trying to do here. You're trying to guesstimate this lower line where it's going to be based on off the trend line and finding the midline. Now again, this was not an easy midline to find. So this one was a little more difficult to find today. But you can get in the ballpark, and I've spent 12 minutes on kind of going over that, and we haven't even gone through the trade. So there's a few trades. There's not that many today considering the type day. So we'll move on here so I won't make this video 30 minutes long, I hope, anyway. But 7 o'clock came just as we're kind of coming down through here, bottoming, just before we bottom out here and come back up. And this is probably a little bit lower here, like so. I think it's more like that right there. And I should have come over here and done it like that. That's probably more accurate right there. But notice that trend line we're working down, and then we get a break, couple of legs down to a new low, and then we're going the other way. So generally I just draw this off the first few swings. But since this is overnight, you get a little more price action to work with as soon as you walk in the door. If you're coming in and getting started about 7, if you're later than that, you got even more to get started with. But we got this trend line, prices come back to it, and this is basically a new high, and you get a first entry, and notice that I'll explain this because I had this same question. That little double top is a correction because we couldn't go higher. Even though it didn't break lower, when it breaks above that, you could consider this a new high. So, or that is a break higher and then another break higher. So what you've got here is you've got a new high and you get a first entry and then a second entry. So it's like a failure. And look how far away from the EMA is. You got two big bearish bars right at the key entry point. I like going short if it breaks lower there, which it does, and it takes off. And if you catch that trade, that's all you need today, because you probably most likely get a runner on that depending on how you play it. So that's a really good setup. And if you get a scalp and then you get a runner, depending on how many runners you got, it's even if you just wrote it down to the first bar that closed outside and got a break above it, that's $587 per contract. And even on a single runner, that's almost $600 on one runner. So that's the kind of, kind of moves you want to kind of catch. And so that might be all you need for today. And then you get another first entry, second entry. Unfortunately, that signal bar is no good. You come down, but if you're just patient, and don't force a trade, even if you'd forced that, it would have worked, unless you used the little bar. Which the problem too is it's not quite back to the trend line, but we could still be going lower because we haven't got back down to this side either. We've kind of been bouncing at the midline. A lot of times that'll send it back to the trend line, but sometimes it doesn't. But anyway, it drops on down, and then you get a first entry, second entry, and we got even further away from that. And so I like that one, just to look for a scalp. But again, you probably get a runner on that. You might have argued there's a failure here too, but I wouldn't trade it on that engulfing bar. And then you got 3 matching lows, so some support. I wouldn't go short there. But if you wait just a minute, suddenly you got a first entry, second entry with another big bearish bar, and you do have room to get out. You don't get the long runner with this one, but you get an easy scalp, and you probably get a few points off a runner if you kept one. And then it turns up. And you get the first break. I don't see any setup there. That's tempting, but right above, closing above that EMA, I'd be careful. I'd wait on a reversal or a failure or something, and you get that right here. It's a failed second entry long. So if it breaks lower there, it's a trap, and look at it, boom, at the bottom just falls straight out of it. I think you'd probably got another runner. Now you've had a break, 2 pretty much measured legs to a new low, and then you got a new low right here, and you get a first entry, you push through the EMA, you pull back, you get a second entry, it fails. That's what a reversal looks like. Confirms the trend line all at the same time. If it breaks higher there, go with it. I don't see anything else here. It kind of chops on up, and then suddenly you get a break, move to a new high, then you get a lower high, then you get a failure, but that's also a first entry, second entry short. Technically, there's not a new low here, but that's still a failed second entry long. It's still a 2 legs. It still looks like a second entry. It's a double test of the range high after a failed breakout. It's coming off the high side of the range with a bearish bar. Just what you want to see, and you expect prices to go the other side. And guess what? If you catch this one, you probably don't get a runner on this one, but if you did manage to get a runner, the bottom just falls out of it, and you get 2 quick measured legs down. So it's a shame you didn't get a setup here. If this would have been a more bearish bar, you could have gone short right there, but you didn't get it. And then it bounces. You actually get a first entry. Actually, that doesn't break lower there. So that's just a first entry, and then your second entry is right here. And there's a little hidden 2 legs back right there. It's also a lower high. And then you get a trap on a failure right there. This one, I don't know if I'd wait and go short down here, but I do like trading this one on the engulfing bar because that's so bearish right there, and it traded up and then turned down. So it trapped some longs probably, thinking they're buying, we're going to bounce here, that maybe it's going to be a range type day. And then it corrects again. Try to go high. Actually, it makes a new high. You get a trend working up, close outside, move to a new high, lower high. That one's pretty tempting. If you went short there, I was a little, because it's a little congested and sideways, but you still might take that trade. But when it makes the failure, if it breaks below there, it's probably going to trap people, and you can see by how quick it moved, those 2 big bearish bars, they trap people. It actually makes one more swing lower, but I don't think you want to go short right there. And then it bounces. And notice your new low, and you get a first entry, and then a second entry, so there's a failure here. I thought I marked that, but I guess I didn't. I like going long there again. It's kind of a repeat of the one we had over here. And it takes off. You can see that it trapped short, or the shorts had the short cover anyway, because look at that big bearish bar. Then it tries to go lower, and then they do it again, and it gets two big bullish bars up. I don't see any trades I like. There is a second entry here, but you got to go long way up here on an engulfing bar, or you got to go long into a double top. Not a good idea because you see it doesn't go far before it's correcting. Bounces, comes back, and it makes a lower high here. Again, this is almost a repeat pattern of what we saw before up here, so I like going short right there. If you didn't go short there, I wouldn't do anything on these next, because now it looks a little congested, but it drops on down. You get a triple test here, but that one's right into the EMA, but when it makes this high or low after the triple test, I like going long. I made that one green because it's still a little congested and it's right into that midline. Sometimes it's a little dangerous going long into the midline, but you can see we've been running from side to side here pretty consistently. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a green light. That's what you want to see if you're going to go long near the midline. And this is not a real big range, so you know it's only pretty much 1 to 1.5, 2 bars to get to the midline, so you don't have a lot of room to play with there anyway. So, but I think that one's worth risking. You don't know that it's going to take off like that, but you would figure it's coming back to the highs, and that's exactly where it went in real quickly in 2 bars. It looked like it was going to turn down, but it broke on out. Notice that new high. Try to go higher once, try to go higher twice, and it actually breaks higher and turns down. You might trade that one on the engulfing, but I'd definitely go short when that one closed bearish. Normally, I would say on a failed second entry long, you wouldn't go if it's usually too close to the EMA, but here you got plenty of room, and it doesn't even matter because the bottom just falls out of this one. I don't think you'd have got a runner on this one because it does come back here and take most of the break evens out before it heads lower. This thing just keeps falling like a knife here and just keeps going down. And finally we get a little bit of correction. Again, I don't see a chance to enter this one. Early on, I really thought this one was right here. It looks solid there. And maybe it is, and maybe this is an overshoot, but it doesn't play out. I guess it could because you do get your break there, but it also seems to fit if you just drag it on down. So, and you can see it's still a midline. So I adjusted this one as we went. But anyway, you get this run up. Actually, you get a run up here, but this looked too sideways. I'm not sure if that would have worked if you did take it, but. I mean, there's exactly enough ticks there. So if you took that one, I don't like that one, but if you took it, it still worked. I mean, that's the beauty of second entries. They're so powerful that a lot of times, even if it's not a good setup, it'll still work. And I just don't, I mean, we're just chopping too sideways there. So, but again, if you took it, it works. But I don't recommend you taking that trade. I would wait and see what happens. And it does, it runs up and confirms that trend line. Unfortunately, as bearish as that is, it's not the signal bar. This is one. Now, if you're going to fudge the signal bar, if you're ever going to do it, I mean, there's like 1 tick difference, and that's so bearish. And we've been in a big downtrend, so maybe you go short there. I'm not going to mark it, but if any of you took that, technically it doesn't qualify because this is your signal bar. But I mean, nothing's perfect in the markets, and I hate to even say that because people will start fudging trades and they'll fail, and they'll say, well, I saw where you did this same thing back on this trade. They'll send me the video and show where I pointed this out. So I hate to even show you things like that and talk about it because guaranteed somebody that doesn't have the experience will try it and it'll fail, and they'll say, well, you said it, you showed it, why is it, what's the difference? And the context won't be the same. You got to know, understand. You got to be a very skilled chart reader. So don't mess with that stuff. I'm sorry I even showed it, to be honest, because it's probably just going to trip some of you up. But we drop on down. We're just kind of chopping. This is all too choppy. And then finally it makes a leg up, close outside, new high. And this actually breaks higher, turns down, it breaks higher, hits the trend line and turns down instantly. Yeah, I like going short on the engulfing bar there, but if not, I think this still closes in its lower 1/3. So just go short one tick below it. And you can see it took a couple of minutes, but it drops on down, and next thing you know, it's just rocketing lower. I don't see anything else in there I like. Technically, there's two legs back there, but this makes a new low, and we've been kind of walking down that low end for a bit. And again, it could have been an overshoot. I tend to think this is correct here, but it didn't matter which way you read it. You end up at the same place. You get the break at the same place. Um, so I don't think it makes any difference how you read it. It still plays out exactly the same. So, but that's, a lot of times I wouldn't be, if that was the key entry point way up here, I'd probably say take that trade because it's two legs back. But anyway, it's just a first entry by the counts, and this is not at the trend line, it's on the trend channel line. So it's too late to be going short down in here. And then finally it bounces. You don't want to be looking for a long yet. You would expect prices to come back up here, and they do. And you actually get a close outside, then you get that lower high right there. Big bearish bar. I like that one. There's enough room to get out. And then you actually get a failure. The only reason I made this one green and not red is because it's right into that EMA, and you see it was holding multiple times across there. And it even though it pushed through there, it bounces back, but it gives you plenty of room to get out. And then finally prices rocket on down. None of those would have given you a run or anything, but they're still scalps. I don't see anything else in here I really like. And until we make a low and then we bounce, so you don't get a reversal here, and you see it's probably a good thing because prices don't reverse. I mean, a lot of times on those reversals, even if it doesn't reverse, you still get an easy scalp because it works as a trap as well, and you get those couple of quick bars. Even if it turns straight back down like this did, you can see if there had been a reversal there, it still had plenty of room to work. And then all of a sudden we're going lower, and I just don't see anything here. You could treat this as a failure. Notice the new high first entry, and then second entry, and it just kind of chops sideways, and so when it breaks lower below this bar, that's a failure. But I think that's too congested. And you might say, well, there's another chance on like a little breakout pullback short, but it's so late in the day, and you can see it would have worked, but you would have had to ride that out and sweat it. And a lot of a lot of people would have probably thrown in the towel and taken a loss, or a little small loss, thinking they're, hey, I messed up. And so it's just not a very good setup, that especially that late in the day. And you can see we continued on down until we finally bounced down here. And again, you wouldn't have had this line unless you were guesstimating it like I kind of showed you earlier. And even on the bounce out of there, we didn't go anywhere. We just went sideways. And so that's how I saw it. Again, it's a spike and channel down. I mean, you got the steeper, and that's too steep. And I mean, I think the market was still undecided up here until finally later in the morning it decided, hey, we're going lower. So there it is. That's what I saw, and we're right under 30 minutes. And I hate when they get this long because it takes forever for them to process and upload, and so it makes my day a lot longer. But anyway, again, thanks in advance for any prayers for my mother and my family right now, and just again, bear with me as I might be in and out a lot, and I might be distracted a lot as well. So, but I'm going to wrap this day up. We'll be back again tomorrow and wrap up the week. And like I said, I'm still going to come in every day, so I'll be around. I'm just going to be around a little less often. I'm probably more distracted, and I'm probably going to have less time to do all the things that I try to do every day that are already hard for me to do as it is. So this is going to make it harder. So anyway, bear with me. Thanks. I appreciate everybody. We'll be back again tomorrow. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com. And we'll see you next time.